Good evening, and welcome to this town hall on renting in San Mateo County. I want to, at the beginning, thank St. Bartholomew's Church and Father Mike Healy for allowing us to use this auditorium. We are under a strict fire code, which means that once these seats are taken, no one else is going to be allowed in the room, but we have provided for an overflow room of another 40 seats for those who come later. There are seats in the front of this room, so if you don't have a seat, please take one. The fire code is, the fire marshal is not going to allow anyone to be standing. This is also going to be broadcast by Mid-Penn TV, so it will be available during the evening and then afterwards. And again, for an overflow crowd, they will be able to watch it down the hall in a room that has about 40 chairs. As many of you know, I'm Jackie Speier, and I have the distinct honor to represent this incredible county in the House of Representatives. I am joined this evening by a remarkable group of leaders in our county. We have 13 out of 20 cities and the county of San Mateo represented at this town hall tonight. And I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out of your very busy schedules to be here. Many other city council members wanted to participate, but some of them actually had city council meetings tonight and others had other responsibilities. So this is a housing crisis. In part, it's due to a lack of supply, and in part, it's due to what can only be called displacement, due to astronomical costs of increased rents. The cost of rental housing is more than a political issue. It is more than an economic issue. It is also a moral issue. And we are here tonight as a group on a local, state, and federal level to develop solutions to what this housing crisis is all about. You know, this is not a cold where if you wait a few days, the fever will break and the cold will pass. This housing crisis is pulling not just at our heartstrings, but at our purse strings. It's damaging to family budgets. It's damaging to our local economy. And it's damaging to our health and safety. For example, 60% of the police officers in the city of San Mateo live outside of San Mateo County. 2/3 of the sheriffs of San Mateo County live outside San Mateo County. God forbid when the next earthquake occurs and we need all hands on deck. I spoke to a woman today who lives in Burlingame, and she is a professor at a local university. Her husband is a nurse in the neonatal care center at one of our hospitals. Their rent for a 2-bedroom condo is $2,700 a month. They have one child. It's just been raised $200 a month. And she said to me, I don't know how much longer I can live in this county. And her point to me was, if we can't live in this county, that's one neonatal intensive care nurse that's not going to be available. That's one professor that's not going to be available. So it's really important for all of us to realize that this is a very serious issue. I'm very grateful to all the council members who are here tonight and to the Board of Supervisors, and I would like to introduce them to you now. Sitting to my direct left is our County Supervisor, Dave Pine. We're joined by Rick Bonilla and David Lynn from the city of San Mateo. From the city of from the city of Burlingame, we have Mayor Ann Keegren and Council Member Donna Colson. From East Palo Alto, we have Council Member Lisa Gaucher. Why are you there? You should be up here. From Half Moon Bay, we have Council Member Marina Frazier and Dr. Deborah Penrose. From South San Francisco, we have Council Member Carol Matsumoto. From Hillsborough, we have Council Member Sean Christensen. From Brisbane, we have Mayor Pro Tem Lori Liu. From San Bruno, we have Council Member Irene O'Connell and Council Member Rico Medina. From Portola Valley, we have Mayor Marianne Derwin. And that is the group of electeds we have here tonight. Very impressive. Oh, Annie, come on up. We also have South San Francisco City Manager Mike Futrell, San Bruno City Manager Connie Jackson, the staff from Supervisor Warren Slocum's office, from Redwood City, the Planning Department, Rhoda Kaufman, from Belmont Community Development, Director Carlos DeMello. We also have experts from the various housing programs, County Housing Authority, Mid-Penn Housing, Life Moves, HIP Housing, and Legal Aid. We also have present the San Mateo County Collaboration and representatives from the Countywide Housing Task Force, where they have for a number of months now been trying to address this issue. So what triggered my need to call for this town hall was after maybe 4 or 5 months of getting emails and letters from constituents complaining about the high cost of housing and their rents going up. This one email came to me from a 74-year-old woman living in Belmont who has lived in the same apartment for 14 years. She's been paying $1,350 per month in rent. And her email had a headline on it that read, "Homeless March 1st," because her rent is going up from $1,350 a month to $2,000 a month on March 1st. That's a 50% increase in her rent. A Pacifica resident whose rent on a 2-bedroom apartment increased by $600 to $800 per month on his 850 square foot apartment commented, "Childcare has gone up too. Our daughter is in preschool, which also went up from $410 to $545 per month. Making just over $100,000 per year does not make ends meet." And he ends by saying, "I never thought that I would be saying that 30 years after graduating with an engineering degree from college, I would be in this position." So on these two boards over here are 5 numbers: 55,000, 2,100, 20 million, 2,800, and 53. Those are important numbers. We have created, in the last few years, 55,000 new jobs in San Mateo County. During that same period of time, we have only increased the number of units, housing units, by 2,100. In the next couple of years, there will be 20 million feet of new commercial space coming online in this county. The average monthly rent on a 2-bedroom apartment in this county today is $2,800. To afford that $2,800 a month unit requires a household income of $53 per hour, or a salary of over $106,000 a year. It's pretty sobering. So tonight we're going to hear from people. We're going to give everyone the opportunity in this hour-and-a-half period of time that we call up, 2 minutes each. Who's our timer, by the way? I am? I need someone with a second hand that can be a timer for me. You'll be a timer, all right. So 2 minutes each, because we want to maximize the number of people that we can hear from. We're going to have speakers selected from around the county, so it's not from just one area or another. If you haven't filled out a form, please do so if you want to speak. This is about renters, but I know the real estate community has come out and wants to be heard as well, and we are going to give you an opportunity to speak. But I wanted to make it clear that this is first and foremost for renters, and then we will also hear from landlords and realtors. We are going to make sure that every one of these comment sheets gets to the cities in which these individuals live so that the council members will have the opportunity to review them. I'm also going to send a packet of these to the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Secretary Castro, so he can recognize that some of the changes that are being made on a federal level are providing us with particular pain locally. I know this is a very emotional issue, but I also know that in this county, we have always been able to come together and define the issues and work towards solutions. So I'm going to ask everyone to be respectful of everyone who speaks. I don't want to have a lot of shouting. I don't want to have a lot of applause. I want to just have the opportunity for all of us up here to hear from every individual who wants to speak. Now, we do have 4 police officers present to make sure we can maintain a level of decorum. And if that doesn't work, a higher being will be called upon to help out in this effort. And she does not take any prisoners. Okay. All right, so we're going to start now. Do any of the council members want to make some opening comments? Okay. All right, we're going to start. Our first individual is Diane Fjellstad, living in San Mateo. Her rent has gone up from $1,850 a month to $2,850 a month in the course of 1 year. Okay.
Congresswoman Speier and distinguished panelists. Congresswoman Speier and a distinguished panelist, thank you for having this meeting. My name is Diane Fjellstad, and I'm a renter, a retired social worker, and a retiree member of SEIU Local 521. I'd like to share with you my experience with the housing crisis. I have lived in my San Mateo apartment for over 13 years, and last October, the rent was increased by $1,000 per month. This is a 54% increase. There are no renovations, no paint, no carpet. My landlord is refusing to give me a lease, which would have given me a little housing security for 1 year. This rent increase is a hardship for me as a retired person living on a California PERS pension. In order to stay in my home, I made the difficult decision to take Social Security benefits years earlier than planned. The long-term consequences place me at risk for a declining standard of living with an advancing age. At present, my budget is characterized as cost-burdened due to housing. If the rent is increased again, which the landlord has stated today in the media he is planning, I am at risk for displacement, forced to move away from my family, my support system, and the community where I enjoy life. Present laws favor landlords, allowing them to raise rents to any amount they choose at any time. Landlords are allowed to evict people for no reason. I live in fear of eviction for having spoken in public, but my concern is for my neighbors, and my community is stronger. I urge you to aggressively support rent stabilization and just cause eviction legislation in order to protect people from these outrageous rent hikes and evictions in this current climate of greed. We need our elected officials to assume a leadership role in this housing crisis. Thank you so much for hosting this event.
Thank you very much, Diane. Okay, I'm going to call 3 or 4 up at the same time so we can move through as efficiently as possible. The next person is Adela Meadows. Next is Barbara O'Neill, Amy Schulman, and Myrna Fernandez. If you all would come forward. Any of you can ask questions. Adela Meadows.
Yes. Hello, and thank you, Congresswoman Speier, for this opportunity. My name is Adela Meadows. I am a renter in Burlingame. In the past, I have owned homes in Burlingame and have also been a landlord. Yes, I have a personal horror story about what it's like right now to be a tenant in your district, but tonight I'd like to speak about how our community as a whole is being adversely affected. This is a disaster not just for renters, it's bad for the entire community. It's bad for the environment, bad for business, bad for homeowners, and bad for our society, current and future. It concerns everyone, homeowners and renters alike, because good schools, well-maintained infrastructure, and available service personnel and first responders go a long way toward contributing to individual property value and the community as a whole. A Burlingame City official revealed that we recently lost 4 teachers from one of our elementary schools due to escalating rents, and that's just one school. Our businesses are suffering. It's expensive to hire and train personnel. Workers face longer and longer commutes. Right now, over 62% of people who work in Burlingame do not live in Burlingame, and that number is on the rise. The longer commutes mean more than just the obvious increased traffic, frustrating congestion, impossible parking, and worrisome pollution. It affects families. The more time mom and dad spend going back and forth in their car, the less time there is for much-needed parenting. Burlingame police advise us that the best defense against crime is to know your neighbors, but how can we when they are constantly being displaced by unconscionable rent increases? Not knowing when you're going to be next creates an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty. The instability is pervasive. We need rent stabilization and just cause eviction protection. I looked at SAMCAR's website and was appalled. 2 grown men that should be ashamed of themselves for lying and distorting the facts. I listened to one member of our city council wrinkle her nose and disdainfully dismiss renters as primarily low income. We're in the process of putting an initiative calling for rent stabilization and just cause eviction protection in Burlingame on the November ballot, and we welcome your support. Please go to rentersrightsnow.com to learn the truth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adele. Barbara O'Neill.
Good evening, Representative Speier, Congresswoman Speier, and distinguished members. Thank you. Distinguished members of the panel. My name is Barbara O'Neill, and I'm a 35-year resident of San Mateo County, one of many recent victims of the affordable housing crisis that is taking place here. On October 1st, 2015, 75% of the residents in my building received rent increases of up to 62%. The monthly rent for my 2-bedroom apartment was increased by $1,100 to $2,850, and the deposit was also raised to match the $2,850, assuming absolutely no upgrades to my unit. Numerous attempts to negotiate a more palatable increase were rejected. So were visits by Rick Bonilla and David Lim. Nobody could convince him to not do this to his tenants. I'm 58 years old, a 15-year veteran middle school teacher with the San Mateo Foster City School District. In order to afford to stay in my home of 11 years, I've been forced to discontinue contributions to my pension and pay the increased rent instead. As a result, my planned retirement date must be pushed further away. Additionally, my limited resources will prevent me from being able to age in place when that time does come. Housing now consumes 60% of my paycheck. A lack of tenant protections in combination with low housing inventory in San Mateo has created a tremendous opportunity for landlords, investors, and developers to reap huge profits on the backs of their tenants. many of whom are low to moderate income earners and are being displaced at an alarming rate.
All right, I think your time is, how many, I'm sorry, how much?
My neighbors and I live in constant fear that our landlord will continue to raise the rent or evict us. Some have been evicted, some have moved away. I want to thank you for the town hall forum, the opportunity to give voice to the victims of the crisis. The imbalance in tenant-landlord rights has created a fearful and unstable environment for so many families. Tenants, not just landlords, are valuable, productive contributors to this community, and as such should be afforded equitable rights.
All right.
We serve.
Barbara, we're going to have to bring
Okay,
your
you're
comments
going to cut me
close.
off? All
But,
right, well,
David,
thank you.
Did you have a question or a comment? No. If any of the members on the panel have questions or comments, just speak up, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Amy Schulman from Foster City.
Hi, my name is Amy Schulman, and I am a renter in the Tradewin apartment building in Foster City. I moved there in June 2008, paying $1,750 a month. The rent was not increased for 3.5 years. However, since then, my rent has gone up by $750, or almost 43%. It's now $2,500. After my daughter moved out last summer, I thought about downsizing to a one-bedroom apartment, but the rent of a one-bedroom was $50 over what I was then paying for my two-bedroom. 2 years ago, I underwent a couple of surgeries and was unable to work for a year. I went back to work last October. My take-home salary is $3,400 per month. My rent of $2,500 is almost 75% of my take-home pay. I work in Palo Alto and briefly thought of moving closer to work, but I know that option is financially impossible. I turned 60 in October, and at this age I was starting to think about retirement, but no longer. My two daughters both live out of town, and my hope was that my second bedroom could be a place for them to stay when they visit. Unfortunately, that can no longer happen as long as I have to worry how I can make ends meet. To stay in my apartment, I have to either get a second job or rent out my spare room. I've never had a roommate before that I wasn't related to by birth or marriage, but I'm now searching for one. Because I'm now working, I no longer qualify for either the CARE or FARA programs, which provide subsidies to pay for PG&E. I applied for the low-cost housing being built in Foster City, but I no longer qualify for that either. Now that I'm paying 75% of my take-home pay on rent, I have to watch my pennies and expenditures as closely as I did when I was unemployed. The housing situation in the Bay Area has become beyond ridiculous, and the system desperately needs to be fixed. Property owners are taking advantage of the boom in Silicon Valley and squeezing out those of us in the middle and lower classes. Thank you for this forum.
Myrna Fernandez.
Good evening, Congresswoman Jackie Speier and members of the panel. My name is Myrna Fernandez. I lived at 1418 Bellevue Avenue Apartments in Burlingame for 20 years. I moved there in 1995. I paid $775, and I was served a 60-day notice in November 11th of 2015 to move out without no reason at all. I had to scrounge up all my belongings and move out of there by January 15th of this year. No reason was given to me as to why I had to move. I tried to reason with the landlord of our building, and they would refuse to speak with me. So with very little time, I decided to move back home to Belmont, and that was that. And I was never given a reason as to why I was being evicted. Thank you very much.
Were you the only person in your building that was evicted, or was everyone evicted?
There was a couple and another person that was evicted within about a month from when I was evicted.
Selective eviction?
Yes. Selective. I was paying $1,525. The rent had just been increased, and they were wanting to collect $1,800 because the one bedrooms were going for $1,800 a month at that time. So I believe that was the reason why I was removed from my place.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to hear now from, let me hear from some of my others. We're going to try and balance this out, so we're going to have some of the property managers and landlords. Sue
thank you for having this meeting tonight. On the other side, there's an 80-year-old woman who owns an apartment building in San Francisco. She has 3 units. They're all rent controlled. She makes about $300 from Social Security. Her 2 tenants pay $600 and $800 a month. She needs a new roof. Does she have the money to buy a new roof? No. She's barely making ends meet because of rent control. She can't raise the rents. It's definitely a supply and demand issue. We need more housing. Thank you.
Good evening, Congresswoman Speier and all of the visiting dignitaries here tonight for our town hall meeting. I want to thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak and to share my thoughts on rent control. I'm a resident of Burlingame and have been a renter there now for 4 years. I am actually against rent control. I feel that there are other options to rent control that we should address. When I think about rent control, I think about the blaring issues of San Francisco and Berkeley and Manhattan and the outrageous rents that people are paying in those areas. A person who earns the median income is not able to rent in San Francisco today and pay reasonable rents. I have many friends that are native San Franciscans. I am one as well, and the city is just priced out of our range. I have a friend who has rented in San Francisco in the same unit for the past 20 years. He is fortunate to live on Steiner in a 1-bedroom apartment, and his rent is currently $950 a month. However, there are many things that are wrong with his unit. His oven doesn't work. His stovetop looks like it's something from the 50s. He's got mold in his bathroom, as well as the vinyl is being torn up on the floor. But he doesn't want to go to his landlord because he's afraid that they're going to raise his rents. And if you think about what's happening in Berkeley, it's the same situation. Instead of considering rent control, we should consider other options to our housing situation. Some other options that I think that we should consider is allow for increased density in transportation corridors, fast-track developments that provide affordable housing, reduce fees on the construction of affordable housing, use assessment fees revenue to create city programs to subsidize a portion of rent control or rent for qualifying low-income residents. As a lender, there are several programs that are available. There's the Good Neighbor Next Door program. This is for law enforcement, teachers, firefighters, EMTs.
Michelle, time's up. I have a question for you.
Yes.
You gave us, we live here in San Mateo County. We represent people here in San Mateo County. You told us stories of Berkeley and San Francisco. Mm-hmm. Do you think it is reasonable that someone's rent goes up 50%?
No, but I'm a renter, and I've lived in the same place for 4 years, and I've had a $100 increase since I've lived there.
But that's different.
And everybody in our building have been there long term. So it's not every unit in San Mateo. I agree that there are outrageous rent increases, but not every unit is an outrageous rent increase.
I know we're not trying to deal with every unit, but we're trying to look at solutions to prevent egregious rent
and I
increases.
agree with you, but I think that there are other options other than rent control.
Well, no one's suggesting rent control, but do you have any other, David?
Congresswoman Speier, I think it's worth noting, because these speakers have used the word rent control over and over again. As far as I know, I am the only council member from the city of San Mateo in the county that proposed a solution. My solution was not rent control. It was a just cause for eviction ordinance, and it was shortened for just as an emergency ordinance for 90 days, and I basically got attacked as a proponent of rent control, just to quiet me down. And all the proposals that she proposed are things that the city of San Mateo already does, but we just do not have the capacity as a local municipality to do it quick enough to stem the bleeding that we have here. So I want to be very clear. I don't think anyone at this table has proposed rent control.
Okay, thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Louis Ray, and I'm here as a renter in Burlingame, a member of the San Mateo County Realtors as well. But I would like to speak mainly for a segment of the community that hasn't been spoken for yet, and it's homeless vets in San Mateo County. We have about 200 homeless vets in San Mateo County, and I'm starting an initiative to find them housing. I'm following the model that has been pretty successful in the city of Austin. It's a lot, there's many parts of that, but I'm here to ask for everyone's help, the community, legislative community. I will be talking to you, and hopefully you can give me some feedback and see if that could be done. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Roger and Christine.
If I may,
Yes, David?
If I may just add, there was a new housing opened in Menlo Park for veterans. So that was a step in the right direction. That just opened in the last few weeks.
City of Millbrae, too. Actually, the federal government has provided a lot of resources for housing for homeless vets, and we've actually reduced the number of homeless vets by a significant margin in the last 3 to 5 years. All right, now we're going to hear from Roger and Christina Marino, Mario Reyes, Michael McHenry.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Roger Marino. I currently live in South San Francisco. My wife and I currently live in a home that we rented for about 4 years. At the time that we rented the house, it was $2,100. We are now at $2,500 in 3.5 years. We've just been served a 60-day notice to move out because a family member who owns the house is selling the house, and we are currently looking for a new place to live. However, with our current situation of our finances, most housing in South San Francisco area and the surrounding areas are going for $3,200, $3,400, $3,500, $3,700. And we're a family of 5, and there is no way with our situation that we can afford something like that. So we either have one or two choices: either be homeless with 2 babies or move out of the state. And my wife and I love the San Francisco Bay Area, and I just think it's very unfair that the rents are so expensive, because I myself feel that people are taking advantage because of the Silicon Valley population. Thank you.
Mario Reyes? Michael McHenry? Bridget McKenna?
Hi, my name is Michael McHenry. I think enough of you have seen me on the news in the last couple of weeks to know what I've been going through. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Congresswoman Speier for helping me, but at the same time, I found temporary accommodations. I pay a lot more rent for a room in a house now that's almost, I know what it takes to find a place to live, regardless of what you can spend. And it's out of control. Nobody wants to address the major issue of blind greed pays really, really well. And it controls a lot of things, but it doesn't control us as voters. And to make this impact felt truly to the people who have the ability to make the decisions to force change, we have to come together as a community and fix this. We need governmental support, but at the same time, we need a lot of help of what's going on here, because let's face it, it's more expensive to live here than it is in downtown New York City. And I've been here, I'm born and raised here my whole life. The quality of life has gone downhill dramatically. It's not worth half of what the artificial prices are being inflated to. And you double somebody's rent in a month, come on, that's wrong. It's a moral issue. The lack of morals is the problem. But there's no way to govern that with politics. The way that is we as a community come together and say we've had enough, and there's been no planning from the cities, the county of San Mateo. They have the ability in the master plan to force middle and low income housing, and 20% of every building being built is supposed to have affordable housing in it. But we need to close those loopholes and double it from 20 to 40% like today. Would be a start.
Okay.
Time up? Oh, sorry. Oh, well, thank you.
Michael McHenry was one of the renters in the apartment building in Pacifica that was yellow tagged last month. All right, Mario Reyes is not here. Bridget McKenna? Helena Penny, and Mother Anna Lang Soto.
Hello, thank you for having this meeting.
Your name?
Bridget McKenna. I was appreciated what this gentleman was trying to do with the no-fault evictions, because when somebody gets a $1,200 rent increase from one day to the next, there's no notice. Even if you were given 3 months' notice, let's face it, $1,200 is usually what people are paying around. So it's a doubling of people's rents, or a 40% rent increase. There isn't a 40% pay increase to back it up. So essentially, it is an eviction notice. And we have a crisis in our area of people being evicted. It's a humanitarian crisis. We talk about units, you know, like they aren't homes. They are homes. And without homes, we have no base. And the working class in our community, we don't have a lot of resources. We are not propertied. That's why we are in the position that we're in. And a lot of our resources is based on the networking that we develop within our communities. This is a resource that we depend on. And once these things start becoming disrupted in mass, as if they are today, we are losing a lot more than just our homes. It's impeding people's ability to make a living. I have a friend who owns a business, who operates the business out of a home, who has been evicted because of remodeling in order to double or triple the rent where he was living, and now his business is in danger of, how do you operate a business if you don't have a home and your home depends on your home? So I'm just, this isn't, people are looking at it like rent increases. This is not, this is eviction notices to people. This is disrupting the core of people's lives.
Thank you, Bridget. Hi, your name?
My name is Helena Penny. I'm so thankful to be given such a golden opportunity in a couple of minutes of your time to share my story. I have dealt with postpartum. I have also been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and major depression. I have accessed and used services from our county and meet with them on a weekly basis. Individuals, 4 individuals, including my psychiatrist. My family and I have been homeless for 5 months now. Our studio rent raised from $850 to $2,100. Our lease changed with an added new deposit, first and last rent, for an asking total amount of $5,700. We had an option of living out of our broken van or shelter home. We were granted help from Life Move Shelter and are at the end of the time frame given to each families. My neighbor, a veteran that lived there for 60 years, was asked to leave. My initial reaction was to push my children and kids, figure it out. I have to help him. He's scheduled to live in a motel for 2 weeks, which was $2,000. I hooked him up with San Mateo County and I said, "You're not gonna pay a penny. You fought for the freedom of my country." He is now living in a shelter. Aside from, thank you. My youngest daughter is under medical care for underweight and failure to thrive. The amount of stress is immeasurable. She has numerous medical appointments with Stanford Children's Hospital and needs constant attention to her eating and feeding schedule. My oldest daughter has special needs and will be evaluated at Stanford Hospital for autism. We have accessed every door there is to help us, yet it is so hard to even focus on medical issues my children have because our basic needs are not met. Research has been found that the basic needs of a family, if they are met, everything will excel. There is a lack of resource out there for us. There is even a wall between the landlord and tenants in communication. There should be an equal rise within the county for both businesses and families to work hand in hand, to still be able to afford their homes and to keep the businesses running. My family and I are willing to help put thoughts, work, and planning into this so that we can rise together, considering our situation. I not only speak for myself, but for many who are not only afraid to voice, but literally depressed by various reasons, housing being the main issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Helena. Helena. She's living at Shelter Network right now. Helena?
Helena, I just want to make sure that we connect you with our Assistant County Manager who's here and our Director of Housing to make sure that all the services we have available at the county, that you're aware of all of them and we can try to help you in any way we can. So we have your contact information and we'll make sure we we'll do everything we can.
All right. Is this Juana?
No.
No. Oh, sorry.
This is Mother Ana Langa Soto.
All right. Thank you.
I've been a pastor in Redwood City for 17 years, and I want to call everyone's attention to the fact that this is not a housing crisis. This is a moral crisis. What we're doing is we're breaking our communities and we're breaking our families for the sake of excess profits. When I think I can speak for my clergy colleagues, when I say that our different faith traditions call us to not make a profit. Profit is fine. However, there is also a call to have a care for the people that you work with, the people that you house, for their families. The injunctions that we get from our various faiths is that our brothers and sisters, our people, our communities count for more than for our financial largesse. I think that there are limits that need to be established. I think that the long-term answer is more housing. However, this is a family crisis. It's a crisis in the community. I have parishioners who've had to move to Ceres, to Modesto. 2 or 3 families are living in San Bruno, 6 people to a room that they're renting in a larger house. I ask that you look and see what is it that can be done, yes, in the long term, but also how can we stop these evictions that are happening without cause, and how can we assist renters so that they don't get priced out of their places of habitation.
Thank you, Mother.
Thank you.
All right, we'll hear from Michael Verdon, Debbie Wong, Bruce Schilling.
Thank you. Thank you, Congresswoman and members of the panel. There's definitely a housing shortage, and this definitely shows the imbalance between the new jobs and housing units. Facebook, Oracle, The Box, Genentech, these are all great revenues for cities, but we need housing to stem the imbalance. It's a supply issue that truly needs to be addressed. Alameda had a 39-year ban on any new housing production larger than a duplex. Now they have a shortage of housing. They're finally addressing that. Redwood City and San Mateo have come up to the plate in building housing, which is fantastic, around higher density in the downtown transportation corridors. Brisbane has a chance with Baylands to build up to 4,500 units or more, and hopefully they step up to the plate for San Mateo County. Accessory dwelling units, granny units, the use of impact fees perhaps to enhance Section 8 rent subsidies in each community would certainly help. HIP housing is a great project that we certainly endorse. And fast track permits of projects with affordable housing that have a component in that. Two short stories. I have a friend in San Francisco who's lived there for over 30 years, pays $870 a month rent, beautiful views of the bay. He's actually bought several investment properties but keeps his rent-controlled unit because he makes over $250,000 a year. Those that are in the units that have been sealed at a rent control level, they're the winners, they're the lottery winners, and it doesn't necessarily help those that really need it coming on to jobs here in San Mateo County. If the market rent was paid, not only would these people have been homeowners, but the unit would be available for other renters. Also, the average market rent is calculated on available units. These units that are off market are not part of that calculation. My mom, by the way, she'll be 92 soon. She can't live off of $1,700 a month for Social Security, not when senior care is over $8,000. Thankfully, my father invested wisely, and she's taken care of. The vast majority of property owners are like her. This is their investment savings for retirement. They're responsible. I actually ask my tenants every 2 years, what's a comfortable rent increase? And there's usually between $75 and $125. These are horrible stories that you hear, and my heart goes out.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Let me ask you a question. What do we do about rent increases of $1,000 a month? What do we do about rent increases that are 50% a month?
It's totally obscene, and I don't want to sort of embarrass myself here, but in the 70s, I still have my little card for being on welfare. So I understand what it is to make ends meet and have food stamps and what have you. These are solutions that perhaps we could have a panel meeting with some of these landlords, because it's outrageous. And I think it's a very, very few buildings. I don't think it's everybody. I certainly don't do this. And most of the people that are in this room that are perhaps associated with real estate do not raise rents that high. But yes, we do need to do something, and that's building more affordable housing.
Yes.
Thank you for this forum. It's heartbreaking to hear all the stories of people who are struggling for housing, and my heart goes out to them. I also worry for my son, who's a police officer, a newly installed police officer in Daly City. How will he also afford to be able to live and serve his city? But I don't know if rent control or these other measures are the answer.
All right, can we stop using the word rent control?
I apologize,
This is not a hearing about rent control. This is a hearing about rent increases of people that live in San Mateo County. And the realtor community, we're very respectful of you being here and happy to have you participate, but let's not turn this into a rent control debate, because that's not what we're talking about.
Understood now. I just want to say that we all need to work together, and I would like to see panelists come together so that we can work on these issues together as a community together, and I think that's the answer. Thank you.
Hello, Congresswoman Jackie Speier. I'm Bruce Schilling. My wife and I own a 55-year-old building, 39-unit building in Belmont. This building has been a key component of our retirement income. During the Great Recession of 2008, 9, and 10, my wife and I were fearful our mortgage lender would call our loan due to high vacancies and low rental income, and we were forced to sell the building, but this didn't happen. As rent stopped falling and started to climb again, this increased income allowed us to make improvements to our older building and increase the tenant experience. We were able to buy more energy-efficient furnaces, bathrooms, new kitchens, and such. But the rental income also helped us improve the resident safety. After the deadly Library Gardens balcony collapse in 2015, we felt it necessary doing inspections on our cantilever decks. During the inspections, we found dry rot and damage. The units were vacant at the time. We were able to make the repairs at a cost of $25,000 per balcony with the engineering permits. Fair Rental allowed us to do this. Speaking of fair rentals, we discovered a third-party management company we hired about a year ago had raised 16 of our 39 units rent increases the first of the year. It was alarming to my wife and I, and 10 of the units were raised in less than a year. Upon this discovery, we terminated the management company, met with the affected tenants, gave them 30 days notice to restore their previous rent, and created the amount of the overcharged rent they paid for 2 months. We do not think we are any different than the majority of the small property owners in the area. We value our tenants, invest in our properties, pride ourselves in being fair to all residents, and hope this will continue to fund our retirement and eventually be able to pass the children our property. Thank you.
All right, now we're going to hear from Juana Gillen from San Mateo, Cynthia Victori, I'm sorry, I can't read your handwriting, from Burlingame, Cindy Cornell from Burlingame, and Reverend Ben Myers. Go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak out today. My name is Cindy Cornell. I'm the founder of Burlingame Advocates for Renter Protections. In the past 2 years, our group has reached out to renters through emails, our website, at meetings, and tablings in front of the Burlingame Farmers Market on Sundays. We have spoken out repeatedly at city council meetings. We have heard stories, horrendous stories, of rent increases and evictions that have forced long-term renters out of Burlingame and all of your cities. I personally have lost good elderly friends whose lives were drastically shortened by the stress of their evictions and high rent increases. Renters in every city in the county have looked to their local councils and the county government for solutions that will actually work to help the crisis. The only real, true, immediate solutions are rent stabilization and just cause eviction protections. Our governments have proven incapable or unwilling to move quickly to build affordable housing. Even if they could, they can't build enough. A few cities and the County Board of Supervisors have established task forces and commissions to study the housing crisis. Lobbyists from SAMCAR and the California Apartment Association are invited onto all of these task forces and commissions by elected officials, and the task forces are going nowhere. We have been approached privately by a few realtors and landlords who support our positions. SAMCAR and the California Apartment Association's missions, however, are to increase the profits of their members and gain more political power. These interests have nothing to do with community stability, maintaining essential workers, or the lives and health of the people who live and work in the county. We need to remove the foxes from the henhouses of our city councils and the County Board of Supervisors and seriously enact serious protections for renters. Homeowners, renters, and small businesses are being critically impacted by the lack of significant progress on solving the rental crisis. We need to get serious about this work and listen only to those who want to stabilize our communities, not profit even more egregiously off of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, council members. Good evening, council members and Ms. Speier. It's good to see you this evening. I'm a resident of Burlingame, been there 10 years, renter on Oak Grove Avenue. Love the city, hate the rent. Love the city, hate the rent. We really need rent control. I won't say rent control, rent stabilization. We need to.
Can you tell us about what rent you're paying now?
I pay, okay, I'm kind of lucky. I only pay $13.75 for a studio, but I share it with my caregiver. and that's the only way I can afford it. If I get a rent increase, I have to leave. I have had one rent increase. So far, my landlord is nice. He's a good guy. I know there's many that are not. That's the problem. And I think, I don't want to say the word greed, but I don't know what else it could be, because I know they're making a profit. They have to be. One of my tenants in my building has been there the longest. He said when he moved in, it was $600 a month. And he pays $1,375 now, too. We were both in studios. Our building is comprised of studios and 1-bedrooms. That's it. And there are 60-plus units. And it's a nice building. It's maintained. It's built in the 40s. It's an old building, but it's nice inside. They have made some changes. I really am grateful for the owners. They made my unit accessible to me because I had a stroke 5 years ago and I couldn't walk. I was in a wheelchair. Now I'm walking and I'm going to have to go back to work again. I'm on disability, so I only have a set amount of money I can use for rent. I would really like to get Section 8 housing, and my property manager keeps telling me to go down to the county and try to get it. And I have signed up on whatever wait list I can, but there's no wait list open for the county of San Mateo. I don't know if you're able to go get more money from the federal government, Ms. Speier, but this county desperately needs it for disabled and seniors, and I suspect women with children, or men with children too.
Thank you.
I'm lucky that I have a caregiver that can live with me and pay me some rent, so we are helping each other, basically.
In a studio apartment?
In a studio apartment, yes.
All right. Thank you very much for your comments.
And I'm also with the Burlingame Advocates for Renter Protection. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ben Myers. I'm the minister of the Unitarian Universalists of San Mateo, and I appreciate your leadership in this. Some of you who attended a similar function with clergy leaders and civic elected and civic officials around the housing issue, we know that this is a very complex problem. It affects me personally. My wife and I rent $3,100, 2.5 bedroom apartment, which is difficult. And many of my parishioners are faced with eviction notices or rent increases. And so looking at the complexity of this, not only as an economic, political, but as you also say, a moral, but also an environmental problem, we know that some of these numbers need to be addressed, and it's going to be difficult to address them, particularly if we keep increasing the commercial properties at the expense of housing properties. So this will not be a linear statement. I want to appreciate all of those renters out there, those people who rent to people, for your asking the moral question, how much is enough? And coming to the conclusion that you're taking pride in making sure that families have a place to live here. And I hope that more of you continue to ask that moral question. So I appreciate the complexity of this issue. I appreciate the fact that it is affecting the moral fabric, the social fabric of our communities, and that we need to pay attention. We're behind the game. We're behind the game in providing for all of our citizens, for the police and the sheriffs and the teachers and the coffee barristers and all those who make up our community. So we need to make sure that there's room. And that's going to be difficult to use as much emergency. This is a crisis, so we will need to take emergency measures to make sure that those who are most affected by this continue to have a roof over their heads and aren't pushed further and further out of the community. That perhaps we bring to bear the problem on those who are bringing the 55,000 jobs into the community, that they also share the responsibility of making sure that even though they can pay a salary that adds to the displacement, and there needs to be responsibility shared. So again, I appreciate us all coming together as best we can, those who are disaffected by it, and those who are keeping time as well. So
Thank you,
thank you
Pastor.
all. God bless us all.
All right, let's hear from Oscar Vasquez, N.A. Mesa, and Brent Turnett.
Good evening, Congresses and city members. My name is Oscar Vasquez. I am a father of 3 children, and I was living in San Mateo for 10 years. In June of 2015, I received a 60-day notice without no reason. We was homeless for 3 months, and I was looking for a place to my kids. So I was tired to looking everywhere, and I decided to sleep in my job, which is a mechanic shop. I asked my boss. My kid clothes, it was so greasy in the afternoons, and it was so hard to see. They playing on the floor, and one of my kids asked me one day, "Daddy, why we don't have a home?" And I tried to explain to him about the problem we start getting. So right now I'm thinking we're not poor people, but we're not rich people. We're humans. So we need help about this one. Thank you so much for your help. Thank you for listening to us. God bless you.
Oscar, I have a question. How much were you paying in rent?
I was paying $1,040
$1,040 for what?
for 1-bedroom apartment.
For a 1-bedroom?
Yes.
And you got evicted, and then what happened?
They start renting the apartment now for $2,100.
And are you still sleeping in the auto shop?
You know, it was an angel from God, and I received a column, and now I have a house to rent it.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Evangeline Laurel Mesa. Thank you for this evening. I will not be crying because instead of cursing the darkness, we try to do something. We are immigrants. We came here with just 2 suitcases and $1,000. We're small property owners. We own properties, but that's through sheer hard work and savings. Some people say that they've been working how many hours, double jobs. That's what we did for 40 years. Worked our tail off, no day off. Taxes, insurance have gone up. Our mortgage has gone up. Minimum wage has gone up. Repairs, materials, labor. Where will the money come from to pay for these expenses? That's the question that I'd like to be addressed at this meeting. San Mateo is a beautiful place because we take pride in it, and there is a price for living in a beautiful county such as this. Those who have been in their apartments for how long? With $1,000 rent, how much were your increases for the number of years you were living in that unit? Maybe it looked like it's 50%, but if you divide that by 10 years that you have had no raises in increases in rent, that's 5% a year. Okay, so let's not look at the big jump. Let's look at the entire picture. Okay, I'm 68 years old. My husband is 77 years old. We cannot afford to retire. Our money is coming from the rentals. Okay, so we are paying for the shelters, the welfare, the Section 8 benefits. Okay, so it's not like the money is here. We pay taxes. Have people forgotten that we pay taxes? We are immigrants, and I've heard people say from immoral to make money, but all those clergies, do you open your churches during winter when it's raining for the homeless?
They're nodding their head yes.
It's good that they do that, okay? So if you want minimum wage of $15 an hour, by God, Give us the money to pay the minimum
All right,
wage.
Councilmember Lim has a question for you.
Yes.
Thank you, Congresswoman Speier. I had a question. What year did you come to America?
1974.
Then my comment would be, my grandfather came to this country in 1913. My grandfather did the same thing you did. Worked hard, made a living for himself. But you know what? When he lived in San Mateo as a young man, he couldn't buy a house here. They would not let Chinese people buy a house here. And the only people who came up and stood up for him and made sure he could buy a house here was the government. It wasn't businesses. Business said, you can't have different people live here. You can't have minorities buy here. That's not the way it works. It'll mess up our culture. It'll mess up our economy. It'll mess up our way of life. It was government that gave you, me, our ancestors the right for the American dream.
Yes.
So you have to remember that. You were here when we had those rights already. So you didn't have to have that fight. But my ancestors had that fight, and it was government who protected us, and it is government that needs to protect the lower middle class today.
We want government to take care of the people and the homeless and not pass the responsibility to the landlords. Okay, so the ball is on your court. Council.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, Congresswoman Speier's esteemed panel. My name is Brent Turner. My grandmother was Realtor of the Year in Daly City. I'm a third-generation Realtor, real estate broker. I own Turner Real Estate, and I am also a landlord. I appreciate the issue at hand here. It is very complicated. I am a SAMCAR member. I am also pro-rent stabilization as well as pro-just cause eviction. To me, because we are in this crisis, as good residents of this area, it makes perfect sense that the government comes in and provides solution to the crisis. I want to associate myself to some of the statements made by the Reverend. Apparently, there is enough commercial space already built that can be converted with some good green housing programs to address some of the needs of the most at-risk people and some of the stories we've heard here in this room. I think it's a combination of a lot of the ideas that are forthcoming. There are no real absolutes here, but I applaud exactly where you're going with this, with the government coming in, providing solution to the crisis. Obviously, we have to help the people that are most in need here and address the concerns and the issues regarding our police, our first responders, our teachers, our nurses, the disabled, the people with children, and the people giving service to the community, as well as bring everybody together. I have faith that you're going to be able to do that, and I applaud you for your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Reverend Penny Nixon, Natalie Sorinoff, and Dan Stessing.
So, Congresswoman Speier, you continue to ask the question, what should we do about these increases? I'm hoping that what we can do is look at the question underneath that, which is what is our vision for San Mateo County? You know, I hope we can continue to elevate the discourse above vilifying landlords and vilifying renters. There are good landlords out there. There are good renters out there, right? What's our vision for the common good? And if we are in this crisis, and by you all being here tonight, it seems like we would agree with that, what do we do in a crisis situation? Surely there's some emergency measure that can be put in to stop the hemorrhaging now, to save the most vulnerable in our community and in our counties. And I would hope, I have heard many of you, I know many of you, and I believe you want to do what is best for all your constituents. And I hope that you will be able to do that. We can figure this out. It doesn't need to be an either-or solution. We can figure out something that keeps people in this county that serves us. We're one of the richest counties, but what we need is what money can't buy. And that's compassion. That's equality. That's the courage to do the right thing for the most vulnerable. I don't want to live in an elite county. I want to live in a county rich with diversity and culture, where people can have families, where they can come together and have a safe place to live. And I believe every one of you wants the same thing. So let's not make it an either or. We're smart people. We can figure this out. But I implore you to do something about the displacements that are going on that you have heard about so clearly tonight. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Councilmember Fraser.
Congresswoman Speier, thank you for being here and thank you for hosting this. There can be a various solutions for this, as various as all our communities are so different. We will attack it in different ways. But last month at the county's task force housing, you brought up something that could be an opportunity. I haven't heard it mentioned. As you know, there's the Lifeline program for utilities. You brought up something there could be a possibility for Lifeline for some of these situations. Could you talk a little bit more about that and maybe how we can help with it and the government or the state?
The concept is one that hasn't been fully developed, but we have Lifeline services and Lifeline rates for utilities, for persons that are low income. I think that we could fashion some kind of a resolution that was a Lifeline cap for persons who are over the age of 65 or disabled, so that their rents would not be subject to these egregious increases that we have seen from so many. It's a half-baked idea at this point, so I'm not going to suggest that it is a perfect solution. But as Reverend Nixon had said, I mean, we need to do something now, and then we need to be cognizant of the fact that building more housing that will relate to the number of square footage in commercial property that we're building has to be more parallel in its nature. So I think from my perspective, we need a short-term pause or a Lifeline cap, and then put our efforts to building more housing. So that was the concept that I was thinking of. But again, it's going to require all of us to come together and come up with some solutions. Next.
Congresswoman Speier, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for your time.
Can you speak a little bit?
Congresswoman Speier, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the time that you've given us this evening. My name is Natalie Cernoff. I am both a renter and a renter in Burlingame and a small business owner in Palo Alto. Unlike many other businesses and professions, being a landlord involves being socially responsible. You're not selling shoes or cutting hair where one can find a myriad of products and services at competitive prices. You're housing people, something we as Americans value as a basic right. You wouldn't want a doctor working for profit alone, would you? Raising rent beyond reasonable forces single parents to move away from their support systems and families. Crowds apartments, think there's only 2 people living in them, and trickles down to small businesses which lose profit when folks can no longer afford to shop in them. Excuse me. It impacts the entire community. I'm a small business owner in Palo Alto where I've had my rent jacked as well, forcing me to raise my prices. The outcome, loss of clientele. But you know what? When I hear a client is in financial despair, I give them a haircut, no charge. As a double renter, can I afford to do so? Barely. But I do so because it's right. I'm hoping we can all support each other in that American dream. My parents were immigrants as well. We worked very hard to achieve what we have. But we believe that the American dream is what differentiates us from the rest of the world. I think compassion is something that we can all show to each other. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Councilwoman Speier panel. Thank you for hearing me tonight. My name is Dan Stedgink. I'm with Fair Rents for Pacifica. I was a renter for 2.5 decades. Single women over 40, veterans, union members, the disabled. These are the groups that are disproportionately being affected by rent control right now. Half Moon Bay used to be called Spanish Town. Down there, they're not calling it a housing crisis. They're calling the exodus of Hispanic renters an ethnic cleansing. As home prices go up, renters become increasingly long-term members of the community. In our neighborhood, I've got two immediate neighbors live in the same house I do. Been here more than 20 years, put 2 kids each through the school system, and houses are $1 million in that neighborhood now. They're never going to be able to buy one. I think it was Oscar who said, "We're not rich people. We're not poor people. We're humans." Thank you.
All right, John Denniston, Linda Sweeney, Doreen Joyner.
Good evening. Congresswoman Speier, thank you so much for hosting this. I'm John Denniston. I'm the president of the St. Vincent de Paul Society for San Mateo County. St. Vincent de Paul Society is a lay Catholic organization that has been in this county for 85 years, since the start of the Great Depression, helping our neighbors in need. I want to say 3 things to you tonight. The first is, in our 85 years in this county, we've never seen anything like this. The help that's available to people in need for housing in this affordability crisis is a drop in the bucket compared to the tsunami of need in the community. And so if you add up what's available to people through nonprofits like us, through housing assistance, through other means, public welfare, others, it can never solve what we're seeing today. It can't come close. And so I'd submit to you 2 things. First is, a lot of people ask, well, this is a free market. If people can't afford it, why don't they move out of the area? And what I'll tell you is, what we see, we did last year 12,000 home visits, visiting the needy where they live, in apartments, in automobiles, in shelters, sometimes in the streets. And what we see is, many are moving out. There is an exodus. But I'll also tell you, many people can't move out for a number of reasons. Sometimes there are extended families where aunts and uncles and grandmothers and grandfathers and nieces and nephews and teachers and neighbors and friends take care of each other in a network. And 2 or 3 of those people can't pull themselves out if they don't have that extended help. There may be health issues. Some people can't afford the cost of moving. Some people don't have vehicles. The bottom line is, many people can't move, and others are holding on for dear life, hoping for a better day. That's why they're not moving. The second thing that I want to say in the last is, the problem is the supply of housing. And unless and until that's addressed, we're going to deal with Band-Aids, and it's not going to solve the problem. So Congresswoman, you said it right at the beginning, the problem is the supply of housing. And here's the friction. The friction is that we have tough choices. There's friction between the goal of affordable housing on the one hand and traffic congestion and the perceived quality of life by those of means who own homes today. And so the only way to solve the supply problem is to increase density in the county. And decisions were made decades ago that the housing density would be what it is. Transportation is what it is. This is a really tough problem. If you want to solve the problem, that's the thing that you've got to go after. Good luck.
Hello, my name is Doreen Joyner, and thank you for having this meeting. I'm a San Mateo tenant. I've just been hearing, from everything I've been hearing, it just made me want to address certain issues. I hear the landlords and the realtors speaking of high density and affordable housing. I guess I can speak for the small population in this county that receives Section 8 housing. I am on Section 8. I've had to fight numerous battles to remain in my rental. And no matter how much housing there is in the county, it's not going to do any good for about the 4,000 people who hold the vouchers, because the discrimination is allowed at this time for Section 8 holders. So like the gentleman just said, I'm pretty much one of those people that have been stuck where I am. And I do have my adult daughter and my granddaughter living with me. And yet at the same time we support each other, we're actually wanting to separate because it's not working together. But none of us, or either of us, can move out to get our own place. So I would hope to see that Section 8 would be added to the source of income ordinance per se. I'm for just cause for eviction. And also rent stabilization, because where I live, I'm on the border of Foster City. I live in San Mateo in a townhouse, and there were 12 of us that has Section 8. Well, they all got kicked out. They got evicted because the landlord didn't want to take Section 8 anymore. So I had to fight with Legal Aid Society of San Mateo to remain a tenant. I requested an accommodation due to my disability, and that's really not even a protection. But I'll just make a long story short. I had to go through a lot. I went through DFEH and what have you to finally get a deal with the landlord. This landlord also does not live in America. I've never met him. I've never been able to see him because he goes through his management company and an attorney. So it's exacerbated my disability. Like I said, they tried to kick me out in 2012. It took till about 2013 to be granted to stay. Then, I think it was in the beginning of 2014, I got another notice where that was the one where they wanted to kick out everybody that had Section 8. And that took, again, a little over a year and just got settled in November of last year. So it's kind of hard to even be productive as a person in society when you're always fighting just to keep the roof over your head. Thank you.
Ms. Joyner, I think all of us presume that Section 8 housing is going to be the lifesaver for people who are low income.
Right.
But I'm hearing more and more often that landlords just don't want to take Section 8 vouchers.
Correct.
Have you attempted to move elsewhere with your Section 8 voucher, and what has your experience been?
Well, each time, those 2 different times I was given the notice to move, I was looking. And the thing that I found, the only thing that's really out there for Section 8 people are to get on the list for like some of the mid-pen places. So, and I don't think society would want that either, because then you're double dipping. So now you're using the government's money from Section 8, and then you're also getting to have it subsidized by the affordable housing. So then you can end up paying, that'd be great for myself, but I don't think society as a whole likes the idea of the free help. So I want to think about it in that way, but no, I've had a lot of, it kind of goes on Craigslist as no pets, no smoking, no Section 8. So I kind of feel like we are I'm speaking here and I think nobody really cares, because I'm the low income, so who cares, right? And I'm sorry to say to the 2 gentlemen, council members from San Mateo, but I've spoken to Mr. Lim before personally, and he seemed very against the rent stabilization. And I saw an article, it may not be totally true, but I saw an article in San Mateo Daily Journal that spoke of how, like, Mr. Lim was starting to care and see the other side. Once it was his friends, it was mentioned, like there's friends, when there's teachers, when there's people of an importance to society, then it seems the more people care. But it was somebody on, Section 8, or just some Hispanic, all the Hispanics that came in when I went to speak at the City Hall and were crying. It just, I've been kind of for a couple years or so, sometimes going to commission meetings, going to the city council meetings. I went through the academy there and trying to, learn city government. And a lot of times I've gotten very just angry. Again, now I'm okay where I am, but I don't really want to be there. It's very kind of hostile between me and the management company. But, it's a roof. But no, it is. It's very difficult. And my own, at the time I had a housing, the lady that works at the housing department said a lot of people just became homeless and what have you because they, were evicted and had nowhere to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Pine, maybe you can.
Yeah, a couple of comments on Section 8. There's no question that there's discrimination against people with Section 8 vouchers, and that needs to stop. There is a bill that's been introduced in Sacramento to try to put some legal protections there. Also, we have tonight our Director of Housing, Ken Cole. I don't know, Ken, if you have any perspectives you want to share on the Section 8 situation, if you want to.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm Ken Cole. I'm Director of Housing for the County of San Mateo. I want to thank the Congresswoman, her staff, all of the electeds here tonight. And our department administers the Section 8 housing program, Congresswoman, so I just want to keep my comments quickly to that. Although I want to say that I wish people could hear in government how much we do talk and care passionately about these issues. We're all in it together. We think about it, we fight for it. We have an excellent task force that's been mentioned here with the county that we hope will generate some significant solutions. On the Section 8 program, the source of income issue, Bill, that Mr. Pine just mentioned, Supervisor Pine just mentioned, is very, very important. But landlords react to the marketplace. And I want to remind people that we have about 4,300 Section 8 vouchers in play in our county, and they're largely used. So although we're very passionate and concerned about the 10% of vouchers that we can't get into play, you have to recognize that we have 90% landlords using Section 8 certificates, receiving the subsidy, and the tenants, although they don't have a lot of mobility, are generally very happy to have the housing.
Right. Thank you.
And the last thing I'd say about the Section 8 program is it's a federal program. And due to budget sequestration, we've lost about 100,000 vouchers nationally. And that's a crime. Thank you.
Thank you. Anne Olivia, why am I having a hard time saying it? Annie Olivia. Victor Catanzaro, Phil Houston.
So tonight I'm going to speak a little bit with a few hats on. I'm a realtor, I'm a council member for the city of Millbrae, and I'm also an advocate of housing, and I own a real estate office that manages about 400 units. So tonight we speak a lot about the victims of housing affordability and what's going on in our neighborhood with regards to the landlords. And granted, there's horror stories out there, but there's horror stories on both sides. There's horror stories for the homeowners too. So beyond the victims tonight, let's speak about how we can get a solution to this. And I think that Ken just spoke with Section 8, of which Congresswoman Speier, we need some more vouchers for that Section 8. If in fact we're going to help some of the people that need to live in our area, and we have landlords that are going to allow for something like that, we need more of that. We've lost 100 in the last month though. 100,000 nationally I think in our area, just in our San Mateo County. I'm going to say it's in the hundreds.
San Mateo County.
Hundreds.
Hundreds, yes.
Yeah, that's what so with that being taken part in a market that is exuberant with the cost here, I'm going to say, come on, please help us with that. That's something that you can do for us. With the market as it speaks with all of our city councils, there are so many proactive things that we could do for our teachers and for our police officers and for our city workers. And I'm going to point out the city of San Bruno, of which I pay rent and hold a business in. The city of San Bruno has subsidies for homeownership to people that work in the city of San Bruno. We have just boomed the market with Wall Street. I know that's a soft spot in your heart. Those people, those banks, those are subsidies that we can reach out to. It doesn't have to be the people here. It doesn't have to be the landlords that have to give. That is another victim of tonight. Those are the rights of a property owner. But yet, banks and people of our stature here for city workers, we can help those people find places to live. And Congresswoman, please help us with those Section 8 vouchers.
Annie, let me just say, and to all of you who are gathered here, if you haven't noticed, the House and the Senate is not run by people that believe and Section 8 vouchers right now, and that's the problem that we have.
But we're not.
All right, your time's up.
I'm asking you, because I think that could be something that San Mateo County, we can be a model for that. We've been a model for a lot of things.
All right, thank you. Next person.
Good evening. My name's Vic Catanzaro. I'm a
Could you raise the microphone so we can hear you?
surely. Yes. My name's Vic Catanzaro. I'm a resident of San Mateo for 44 years. I'm also a real estate broker that I've been a broker for 44 years. I'm a landlord. I've rented many units, homes, and contrary to what you've heard this evening, I don't adjust my rent every year. I don't adjust it 40 or 50%. If I adjust it, which has been years, I adjust it approximately the rate of a CPI adjustment. And I try to adhere to that. I also have properties that I'm trying to develop. I have a project in San Mateo that I've been working 2.5 years to get through staff. I haven't got there yet. I'm still working on it. The project is under-designed for what's code permitted, but I'm still having a lot of issues. I have other property that I was approached about last year from a major developer that wanted to do 94 units in San Mateo. They set up a meeting with San Mateo staff. They went in and they were discouraged. The developer was a major developer that does a lot of properties in and about the county. So where I was trying to encourage the developer to go in and seek housing, city turned them away. I was surprised. I think it's well suited. The truest resolution to this is to provide the density, cut the time for processing down. People like me, I'm a small businessman, can't afford 2.5, 3 years to bring a project to fruition, to provide housing. So that's your target. Change that. Thank you.
All right, Kelly Baum, Lubia Calderon, and our last speaker is going to be Lillian Jimenez.
Hi, my name is Phil Houston. I want to thank you for having this forum today. I am a realtor. I'm also a tenant. I rent here in San Mateo. I've owned property in the past, and with the experience I have, both sides, the views of both sides here, when I listen to some of the renters here and the problems they're having, it is heartbreaking. We're not heartless. I'm not a heartless person. I also worry about my rent going up. On the other hand, I have numerous clients who own rental property, and I know how hard they worked to be able to get it, and they rely on it for their retirement. And we go into the supermarket, and eggs now are twice what they were 2 years ago. Things keep going up for everybody, and retirees, owners of property, also need to be able to increase their income to afford the increase of living. So it seems like we're asking the landlords or the investors to take on this problem that we're having right now with not enough housing, instead of trying to find a way to spread it. We need to help people who need help, but I don't think it's fair to put the burden on just the landlords or the investors. The other thing...
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What solution do you offer for those who are witnessing 50 and 60% increases in rent? What are they supposed to do? What are those of us who are elected supposed to do to address those concerns of people being displaced in our communities?
Mm-hmm. I think there's two answers to that. One is some of the rent, I'd need to know the history first. if somebody had a rent for a very low rate, $900 a month over the last 10 years, and the rents have been going up, and now it's $1,900, and then they get the $1,000 increase because now the landlord has a need for it, they can't keep it, that would be one thing. If you have a different type of landlord, unfortunately, I think in any business, whether it's this or, I say Congress, we're not all great people. Sometimes there's greedy people, and finding a way to deal with them, I don't have an answer for that one.
Well, that's
But
the
I
answer
think-
we've got to come up with.
But we have to do it so that we're not hurting all of the other people
Well,
if we
okay.
answer.
I think we've all had the opportunity to hear from many people tonight, and we'll all have the opportunity to say a few words at the end. But let's be clear. People who have spoken today have often talked about rents going up $1,000 in 2 years, not $1,000 over 10 years. So let's deal with reality, whatever that reality is, and recognize that there is a problem here.
And And I may not have been clear what I was meaning by over 10 years that it hadn't been raised.
No, I understand
and then
what
all of
you
a
were
sudden
saying.
it happened.
But I was just
there is
pointing out-
and something like that I think is reasonable.
Right.
But the other kind, maybe not. If they're just trying to get them out to do, and I don't even know what the reasons. Most investors, you can't charge more than the market.
Well,
otherwise you sit there empty.
Okay.
But there are some bad ones out there, and
Thank
you can't
you.
make one rule for it. Thank you.
If our last speakers could all come forward so they...
I think I'm the last sob story of the day. My name's Linda. I'm 70 years old. I'm a retired public guardian from this county. When I moved up here from Santa Cruz County to work here, I moved into an apartment, and I've been in that same apartment for 25 years. Now, I don't think I'm going to be there much longer. To make this most recent increase, I've dropped health insurance, cut other insurance to the bone, modified a lot of other things, never go to a movie anymore. Reasonable, and I used to have a pretty good landlord. I mean, the rent went up every year. I mean, it was like $25 to $50, so, okay, that's fine. Recently, someone apparently told him about this holy grail of market rate. Well, he's implementing it now. So a lot of people where I live will be moving, including a friend of mine who is 80 years old and has been in the same place for over 20 years.
So your rent's going on up how much?
Only $300. But, that's a really big
And how much do you
chunk.
pay? It's gone up from what to what?
It went from like 15 to 1850. So it still is reasonable, but not for me. And I think I'm in the position of a lot of people where, we're not really poor, but we're sure not middle class anymore. So every day I spend hours on the internet looking for other cities to move to. I'm even thinking of becoming a Portlandian. That would be interesting. But it feels like every meeting that I go to, the landlords are always there saying, rent control, it doesn't work, it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We have the opportunity to design something that will work, something that will be fair to everyone. And there is a way to be fair to everyone. Of course it's not fair for someone who makes $250,000 to live in a rent-controlled apartment. It really annoys me. But why do we have this now? It's like Gordon Gekko won. Greed is good. Well, it's not good. It's ruining a lot of things. It's ruining a lot of lives. It's ruining communities. It's ruining small businesses. My money goes to the landlord. I don't have money to go to dinner down the hill anymore. I mean, it's just the money's not there for other things. And I really miss it. I thought I would have a good life. I worked my way through college and actually paid my student loans back, and now here I am with a goodbye notice, and that's how I feel it'll end up. It'll just be goodbye.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
6 months, because they only do 6-month leases now.
My name is Tom Linebarger. I've been a renter, I've been a tenant, and I want to speak on why I think we have to have rent stabilization and just cause eviction. Redwood City, where I live, built 2,000 new units in the last year and a half. I'm in a union. Not a single union worker worked on them. We got no money. It all went to out. Sometimes people from Alabama built these places. But the rent on these now for a one-bedroom is $3,000 a month. No one can afford that. And what happened at the same time in Redwood City is 144 buildings were purchased. These were all relatively low rent. They were older buildings. All of them are going to double or triple their rent. All of those people have gotten eviction notices or prices that go up so high, it's essentially an eviction notice. And people, I talked to some realtors and they said, it doesn't work. Rent stabilization doesn't work. It works. Talk to people in San Francisco. It works. Most renters in San Francisco fall under rent control. This year, 1.3% is all it can go up. If you move into a place now and you can afford that, when you move out, they can raise it to anything they want. If you move in, it does not go up higher than the CPI. It can't, that's by law. But these only apply to the older buildings. We must maintain a community that is integrated not only racially, but also economically. And the idea, we're kicking out so many people. I go to garage sales and I see, you stop and there's a teacher going out. The EMT guy is getting kicked out. They're not moving to the next city over. They can't afford that either. They are leaving the area. And I do not want a Bay Area that is Atherton. I want a Bay Area that has the same kind of vibrant cultures that we have now. And thank you very much for your time.
All right, I think we have exceeded our time. I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to open the mics now to members of the panel who might want to make some concluding comments. Good. Doctor?
Yeah, Deborah Penrose from Half Moon Bay. My thought, the thing that's come to my mind from everything that the public has said is that we have a crisis, but only one person spoke to the reason for the crisis. The true reason for the crisis is Silicon Valley. It's Google, it's all of the big corporations which are bringing in young people, giving them huge amounts of money, and those people are coming and taking the apartments away from the people that have been living here all of their lives. How can we get Silicon Valley entrepreneurs, businesses, to take responsibility for that? What method do you use? I don't know. But I think it's a fair question.
Other comments? Ann?
I would have to agree with that. It's multifaceted, so one solution doesn't fit all. And the numbers are quite interesting on the board. So if you have 55,000 jobs that have come in, and we only are supplying 2,100, there's a big gap. And this gap has been there for quite some time, and we haven't addressed it for many, many years. And like I said, it's multifaceted. There's a tendency and I saw a little bit of it tonight, that it should be the developer doing the subsidizing. Well, if we're going to look at this holistically, everyone has to take a piece. So we have to look at the federal government, we have to look at the state government. Housing affordability should be a priority. And the funding isn't there for, let's say, nonprofits to be able to build housing in the various communities. That's part of the problem. The other problem is developers who are trying to get their projects through. San Francisco, it's not unusual for 4, 5, 6, 7 years to get a development through. So you look at all the money that developer is paying during that 10-year period, or mortgages and so forth, to try to do some good, but then it doesn't pan out 4 or 5 years later because they spent so much money up front. So there needs to be the developers, and I will say there are good developers and there are bad developers. And you know, many of these stories, they are heartbreaking, but there are also a lot of good developers and a lot of good landlords too. So we have to keep that in mind. So the question is, you know, how do we supply the housing? A lot of it is funding. And for immediate reaction, how do we get that funding available so we can help subsidize people that are getting displaced? And where are we going to place them? That's the other issue. We have a supply issue here. I know rent control was brought up. I don't want to elaborate on that. But sometimes that rent control takes that supply because there's not a turnover for people. And so then those places aren't meant for the people who really need it. That's a big problem. So then what happens is when people can't find, let's say, housing in San Francisco, you have two extremes. You have extremely low rent and then extremely high rent. Because what happens is the property that's left for people to buy becomes extremely expensive. And then in order to build, it costs a lot more to build because the property was so expensive initially. And there's no middle ground. We have no middle ground here. But then we keep bringing in more office space. We bring in all the Googles and the Facebook and the LinkedIn and Yahoo and everybody else that are bringing so many people to this area. They're giving the salaries to the people. They know it's expensive, so they're subsidizing that for their own employees. They should put some money into some type of fund that helps because they are taking that supply away from us. So you may have developers that put money in, you have your big corporations that put money in, you have cities that put it in, the state and federal government, and try to look at this as a long term. Because the other process with this is, I'm more promoting first-time buyers too. Because when you do these projects, it may benefit, let's say, 100 people. But then what happens after the 100 people? They have the tendency to stay there. I don't blame them. It's affordable for them. But then what happens to the next 100 people and 100 people after that? That's the thing we have to look at. How do we create a fund that we can continually subsidize over a long-term period rather than just a short-term period? So it could be a rent stabilization fund. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but with all these heads, we should get the stakeholders from all different groups, and the county has started doing that, and I commend them for doing that. That it is multifaceted, and it's going to take time to make correct decisions, but I also think the higher ups, the federal government and state government, need to make it a priority in order to make this work. There's so much time put in, let's say, in high-speed rail, and so much money put in there. We forgot about the necessity of housing. That should be the priority here. That's what we need to look at.
Anyone else? Anyone else like to make closing? Yes, David?
I want to just thank Congresswoman Speier for her leadership, her compassion, and her courage in bringing this issue to the fore. And with respect to my fellow council members from other cities, I believe Congresswoman Speier is doing everything she can, and I believe the onus on action falls on us, the local municipalities, to take action. We can't wait for the state or the federal government. We can't blame a divided Congress and White House. We were elected to serve our cities, and we need to step up and do it. I'm ashamed to admit that Ms. Joyner was absolutely right, Congresswoman Speier, when she said that I didn't do anything until it started to affect the middle class, the teachers, the police officers. She was absolutely right. And I was absolutely ashamed when I came to the realization that I had been letting our city slowly bleed its lower class and middle class. I will say something that I hope is instructive to my fellow council members. When I took on this issue and decided that we needed to do something, I had the support of a great many friends in SAMCAR, the California Apartments Association, the Chambers of Commerce. Many of them are sitting here. Many of them are fine and wonderful people, the executive directors, the board members. They have been and continue to be my friends. And they understand that this is a serious problem. And they are not the landlords who are responsible for this devastating increase in rents and displacement of renters. It is a lot of overseas investors, a lot of new owners. But what I was very disappointed in is when I finally made the decision that we needed to take short-term action, as the Congresswoman has urged us to do, I was shut out. And instead of the communications continuing, instead of meeting people for lunch, I was attacked. I was basically threatened that, gee, you must not want to be a council member anymore because we're going to take care of you. Flyers were circulated, orange flyers saying, call for action, rent control. I'm sure the Congresswoman knows that these very flyers were issued today for your hearing, raising the specter of rent control when I never used the word rent stabilization or rent control in my just cause of eviction ordinance. But we cannot, in good conscience, stand by and do nothing in the short term. We can't wring our hands and say, well, what's the root cause of the problem? How are we going to address it? State and federal governments need to do something. When our neighbors, our friends are being evicted, are living in their cars, are living in auto mechanic shops, we must take action. And so what I urge my fellow council members to do is take a long, hard look at your conscience and decide what is the best solution. And it may be different for different people, it may be different for different cities. But we can't do nothing. And Congresswoman Speier, thank you again, because I think through your leadership, you've raised the level of discourse on this conversation and maybe given us all the courage to take some action. So thank you.
And to my colleagues, I just want to thank you for being here tonight. My name is Lisa Gaucher from the city of East Palo Alto. We do have rent stabilization and the just cause rent eviction. The problem that we're having even with that is the single family homes. Just yesterday I had a conversation with an 80-year-old disabled lady who's being evicted from her house from being there after being there for 46 years, and I don't have an answer. So the thing that keeps me up at night on most nights is when I see the residents have been there for so long who are being displaced. And there's really nothing I can do to stop it. I thank you for having this conversation. I think we need to continue to sit at the table. We've said a lot of the right things. There are a lot of these organizations that are coming into our area that need to be at the table to solve the housing crisis. So let's continue the conversation. I appreciate all of you.
Thank you, Lisa. Anyone else? Rick?
Thank you, Congresswoman Speier, and all of my colleagues for being here tonight. And thank all of you, the members of the public, both the property owners and the renters, for being here tonight. This is a long-standing issue. We have failed to build enough housing in our community for many years. But that doesn't mean we don't have a crisis right now that we have to deal with. And I hear people from both sides of the issue expounding based on their beliefs and thinking of the American dream and talking about, in some cases, their own personal needs and their feelings. But one thing I know is that when a person is being evicted right now, for whatever reason, if they're given a 60-day notice, their rent is increasing, when they look in the newspaper or on the internet and they try to find a place that's affordable here, there are no places that are affordable. anymore. Okay, so I appreciate owners who say that they've kept their property owners with existing rents and raising it only by the CPI. That's good, but for some reason that doesn't seem to equal some place to live for people who are being forced out of places where they have been paying the rent that was asked. So right now we have a huge jobs and housing imbalance. The jobs keep coming. I don't want to stop that. We need the jobs. We need the prosperity that comes with it. We need the tax base that comes with it. We do need employers who create new jobs to take part of the responsibility for creating housing. We do need to build more housing. Some of that housing needs to be affordable. We need a lot of affordable housing, but I know you can't build just that because it takes all sorts of subsidies. And there's an issue that I have, which is right now, a lot of people don't earn enough money to be able to afford to live any place. And in my mind, that's a basic economic injustice. The minimum wage is just way too low. And it makes a difference because if the rents just keep going up and people can't afford to live in them, the people who make these lower wages are the backbone. They're the working people in our community. They mow the lawns, they wash the dishes, they work at the mechanics, the auto shops, they're working on construction sites. People on construction sites aren't all big fat cats that make a lot of money. A bunch of them just go from job to job. They don't work all year long. They might cobble together $40 or $50 or $60,000 a year. But as we see, it takes that much money just to get by, barely scraping by without much savings. I favor taking some action. I ask all of my colleagues up here tonight to continue the conversation that we have to have. In San Mateo, we do have a housing task force that's been appointed of the rental property owner community and nonprofits and renters. They've been working for several months trying to find a solution. I'm not sure they're really getting there, but the important thing is that it's going to come back to the council. Then we'll have that conversation. And one way or another, we're going to keep working until we find a solution. So thank all of you for being here.
Lori?
Thank you, Congresswoman Speier, for hosting this. I agree it really needs to be a regional issue. I'm Lori Liu, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Brisbane. And what I hear tonight is that, this is a moral issue. It's really threatening the fabric of our community, that we're at risk of losing the families, the teachers, the government workers, the seniors who have invested in our communities and upon whom we rely for providing those services and for educating our children and protecting our safety. So what I'm hearing is that we need definitely the short-term solution, and we also need the long-term strategy of creating more affordable housing. In Brisbane, one of the things we've been looking at is taking our city-owned property and looking at models of creating workforce housing. We've looked at what they've done in College of San Mateo and Kenyatta College, where they've created housing for their professors to be able to stay for a short-term period of several years to build up some funds so that eventually they can go out and buy a home of their own. So I think the solution really is not to perpetuate the rental cycle, but to allow people to save up money so that they can one day become a homeowner. So thank you for allowing us to engage in this dialogue.
Anyone else? Irene?
Jackie?
Hi. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Jackie, for having us here. I just want to say, and I see some state representative aides in the back, and I just want to say in the city of San Bruno, when we had redevelopment, we used it very well. We had over 300 units that are rent controlled. Well, they're not rent controlled, I take it back. They're affordable housing, they're senior, they're everything you would want housing to be. But once rent control, once redevelopment went away, the city, that tool went away. And that's one of the things that all of you in the county know. We don't have that ability to put that kind of money aside anymore. So the state people back there, maybe you could take that message back to the electeds in the state that they should look at reinstating redevelopment. Thank you.
Donna Colson, Burlingame City Council.
And I did start my career working in the redevelopment agency world, helping first-time home buyers and affordable housing type advocates. And I would really agree with you that bringing back the redevelopment agency or that type of programming would be very, very helpful to both create affordable multifamily residential apartments as well as first-time homebuyer options. I also just want to mention briefly what we're doing in Burlingame to try to crack this affordable housing lack of it that we have in our city. We are the 4th densest city in the peninsula, and we are 52% renters. They make up a very important and integral part of our community, and one that I actually care deeply about. We have, first of all, put together 2 city parcels to develop 144 units of affordable and senior housing. I'm very proud of the council. I wasn't on there at the time, but they did a really good job on this. We're working with some local nonprofit agencies to get that going. In addition, we are working with our local for-profit developers and encouraging them to put in more affordable housing in their projects. And one of our recent 268-unit developments did put in some affordable housing at their own volition, which I really appreciated. And in addition, we're working on our Burlingame general plan right now, which includes a very large component about housing. I'm a small business owner in town. I really get the rent situation, not just from multifamily residential, but from businesses. My business rent has doubled in 4 years. My rent has gone from $9,000 to $16,000 on my business. It's very hard. I can't hardly afford to pay my employees, and we actually operate at a deficit. And I have a small office, and my rent has increased there too. So I really do understand. And if we can take a look, for example, in our Envision Burlingame, which is our new general plan look, Rollins Road is where my business is, and we are really encouraging people and hope you will go on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock to our Park and Rec Center to talk about this and let people know that, for example, Rollins Road is a place we could build affordable housing. We could build artist live workspace. We are losing our artists in this community to LA every day. There's nowhere for writers, poets, artists, visual artists, performing artists to live. I would love to see more of that as a partnership on Rollins Road. And in addition, senior housing. We're working with the Peninsula Hospital, as well as we're working, again, Rollins Road and some of the other areas that we could develop. So I really hope your voices do need to be heard at these meetings, and I hope you will come and encourage that. And I'd just like to thank my fellow council members who I know are extremely committed to this and very passionate about it, and I'm looking forward to working with them and all the rest of you on solving these problems. Thank you.
Supervisor Pine.
Yeah, just a couple of brief remarks. I've been in the Valley, or been in San Mateo County now for 30 years and seen ups and downs, but I've never seen anything like this, where such a booming economy has had this dark underside and has caused this unbelievable distress and disruption in our communities. And I think everyone here agrees that, it is a crisis of a magnitude we've never seen. And we have to use every tool that's available to us. A couple that I think are most promising are commercial impact fees, as these 20 million new square feet of office moves in, and this is the time to have a commercial impact fee. On the production side, I know it's not a lot, but in some ways it is a lot. The county's invested $30 million and created upwards of 800 units in just 3 years. We'll continue to do all we can. We need the help from the cities to also make these investments. And the last one too, that's often overlooked are these second units, where you put another unit in the back. Now, one common denominator on many of these things is many of these solutions cause other hardships. If you have second units, you have more cars parking on the street. So are we ready to accept that? So all the solutions also come with some other cost. But everyone in this room understands that we have to join together and make progress.
Anyone else? Well, this has been a remarkable evening, both in terms of having the benefit of all of my colleagues from the county and from the city councils come together. This is unusual for us to have a town hall where we all sit together and hear from the community. So I really appreciate you all being here. I've lived in San Mateo County for over 2 generations. I was raised here. I love this county. And I know that we have what it takes to fix this. It really does require us, though, to have the courage to do things differently than we've done them before. It requires us, whether we're renters or realtors, homeowners or landlords, to recognize that it's not good enough for Oscar to have to live in an auto repair shop, or for Marie to be kicked out of her home at the age of 97 when she's dying of cancer, or a resident who has lived here for 14 years, is a senior citizen, and has had their rent increased 50%. That doesn't work. So we can fix this, but we're going to have to take off our armor, and we're going to have to stop using the rhetoric of old and look at ways of creating a short-term fix and a long-term fix. And we cannot put our heads in the sand. That's what we have done historically. We have basically said, this will pass. This isn't passing. And all of a sudden, we're going to wake up one day, and the nurses are going to be gone, and our local law enforcement and fire protection aren't going to be there when we need them, and our teachers are going to be elsewhere. And the gridlock that we're already suffering with, and I only suffer with it on the weekends when I come back from DC. You suffer through it all week long. We have got to realize that doing what we have done is not enough. Saying what we've said before is not enough. And the fact that we're all here tonight is a good sign that we can and we will make a huge difference in changing the way people live in our communities. So thank you very much for being here tonight, and thank you for being so respectful. Good night.